All right, guys, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another DFS Army MME Playbook, aka Domination Station tutorial. The point of this one is going to be to kind of break down how there's a chase fraud alert, so glad you guys got to see that. But going to break down how I set up the Domination Station to create stacked lineups and to attack an NFL contest. I'm going to do Fanduel, DraftKings. Let's do Fanduel. Why not? Let's do Fanduel this week. DraftKings, you want to do DraftKings, Fanduel? It doesn't make a difference. But for all intents and purposes, what we're going to try to do is create stacked lineups to attack mass multi-entry contests. And, before we get into it too deeply, you have to understand the first things first, which games we want to attack with our stacks. The new stacking system that's available on the Domination Station Optimizer is the most sophisticated and advanced stacking system in existence. Do not be fooled. Cliff asks, real quick question. Yeah. Cliff asks, is there a shortcut on the Domination Station to not having a tight end on the flex? Yes, there's a little button here, and you can set as however much percentage of the tight end position as you would like. So if you would like to not have one for whatever reason, you can set this at 0. I'm not going to do that because I don't believe in, I like the tight end position this week, quite honestly. Anyway, all right. So what we're doing here is we're going to take a look at how I set up the Domination Station Optimizer to attack mass multi-entry contests. But the first thing is, how do we figure out which games should be game stacked or team stacked? This is a lot of things that I've covered in the Players Club podcast, which is currently downloading and processing. So I figured I'd just jump into this live stream while that was happening. But if you take a look at the Statsational power rankings model that we have for DFSArmy.com VIP subscribers, it's on the Beat the Bookie website under NFL Power Rankings tab. This little column here, offensive passing minus defensive passing, is gold. What is this telling us? This column tells us which teams both can score or pass really well. In other words, they have great passing offenses and terrible pass defenses. Why are we interested in teams like that? Because when we're game stacking, we want to find games where the teams play bad defense and great offense. The ultimate team that has been doing that this season is the Atlanta Falcons. They can't stop anything or anyone. But at the same time, they score a lot. So here, their offensive passing rating is 70. That means they're producing 70 more yards per game than average expected. But defensively, they are horrific. Teams pass for 50 more yards per game against them than on average. So essentially, it creates this incredible situation where you want to stack these games. Anybody with Atlanta, you want to stack games with Tampa because the passing games are incredible. They can't stop the pass in Atlanta. Who does that mean? If you're playing the slate tomorrow, I'm talking about the Panthers passing attack. Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore. But we're not talking about that right now because we're not playing that slate. The Rams are a team we want to stack against a lot of the time, except for the fact that San Francisco is not a prolific passing offense, but still, they are a team that has produced incredible games and stackability. Right. And if you start to look at these numbers, you start to recognize these teams. Oh, yeah, these have been great teams to stack against. And the numbers bear it out. Kansas City as well. And we're going to be stacking the Kansas City game. We're going to be stacking the Atlanta game. And we'll figure out some other spots to stack as we go through the slate itself. We've got a lot of this written out on the coach's cheat sheets on the sheet I put out. So I guess we're doing FanDuel. So we could take a look at the FanDuel side of it. And you could see the core plays, Mahomes, Watson, Matt Ryan, Kyler Murray. and then a couple of GPP plays that we'll talk about as well as we go through the setup here. But all right, let's get started with setting up the domination station. If you guys have questions about how to do this, let me know in the chat here. I'll try to get to some of them as I can. Yes, 49ers Rams. The issue with 49ers Rams is that the Rams pass offense hasn't been spectacular. The 49ers defensively just been very, very good. So I'm a little skeptical of that game total, to be quite honest. I think the Rams defense is more legit than they're getting credit for, but we'll see. We'll see. All right, let's get started with setting this up. So before we actually set up any stacks, we want to go through our position groups. Quarterback position, not going to be super important because we're going to fully control the quarterback position within the stacks themselves. Mike asks, when stacking a high game total, is it okay to stack your quarterback with 2 or more instead of 1? Yes. Yes, it's okay. It's definitely okay. And we want game stacks, so we're going to bring it back around with somebody from the other team almost all the time. And in certain situations, we don't want it. Like, it's very interesting this week that with Mahomes, while Mahomes has done very well as a quarterback, while Mahomes has done very well as a quarterback this year, he hasn't produced a ton of multiple big games for multiple players on his team. So Mahomes could be used naked. He could be used with just one player from his team, even though it's the highest ranking on the slate in terms of the game projected total. Is it worth using the Dom Station building only one big GPP lineup? No, I would not use the Dom Station. I would handcraft one lineup. I handcraft my hybrids. I handcraft 2 or 3 or 4 lineups every single week that I'm going to enter into high dollar contests that are tournaments. I handcraft my cash lineup for the most part as well, although I do use the Domination Station for that. You can pretty much just click the button on the Dom Station and oftentimes get pretty close to what is a cash lineup. But as far as the making a tournament just one-off or a hybrid, I'd rather handcraft that myself. All right, let's get the Dom Station set up. So what I like to do first is I like to go through every position group. I uncheck all of the players as a starting point. Then I'm going to check back ins one, any player that I have even the slightest interest in this week, even if it's just going to be, because we're making 150 lineups. So essentially, I don't want to disinclude anybody that I have even mild interest in allowing. You'll see I will disinclude some people that you might like you like Jordan Howard, guys. Sorry. I'm not using him. Not my kind of guy. Carlos Hyde, guys you don't like, I might leave him in there just a little bit. Just a little bit. Gotta use a little Drizzy. Matt Breida, can leave him in there, but I'm probably not going to use him. This is my ultimate, like, absolute, I will allow them. Oh, Chase Edmonds. Big T, Baltimore, Cincinnati fits my criteria. Yes, it does. I don't mind that game. I actually think there's going to be lots of passing from the Cincinnati side. And on the Baltimore side, we're probably looking at more rushing. If you take a look at the cheat sheet, sorry, I'm not used to. Yeah, I should put that in there. But if you look at the cheat sheet on this particular game, on the Statsational power rankings, you'll see lots of passing yardage for Cincinnati, lots of rushing yardage for Baltimore. All right, let's get back to it. Domination Station. So we're just checking back in any players that we're willing to allow in our lineups under any circumstances. Lance Murray, I'm leaving him in because we may, if we find out that he's starting, we're lock buttoning his ass. Chase Edmonds, same deal. Right now, we're not using these guys. Their projections are low. We're not going to get them in our lineups. But if we find out that they're starting, we're going to lock button pretty much both of them. And, of course, the chalk pay down option, Malcolm Brown. So we'll talk about him. I like him better on Fanduel, I think, than DraftKings this week. But now wide receiver position, same deal. I start by unchecking every player. Why wouldn't I use 49ers running backs? The 49ers are down their right tackle and their Pro Bowl fullback. So now we're going to get a split touch situation with the running backs that are kind of in not the best spot, where the offensive line is a little bit questionable right now, and the fullback is out. That said, they're usable. I just like volume. I want my running backs to get a lot of volume. Get some questions real quick. What are my thoughts on Dede Westbrook and DJ Shark? I love Dede and Shark. I like Dede more. Shark's going to be covered by Marshawn Lattimore. Dede Westbrook's going to be in the slot. The slot wide receivers have just literally torched the Saints this season. Just last week, if you note, Mike Evans was completely blanked by Marshawn Lattimore, but Chris Godwin in the slot went ham. So yeah, I like Dede. And I don't mind DJ Shark. He's a fucking stud. And if you're in season long or dynasty leagues or whatever, DJ Shark is a guy you want to be making trades for now before his price goes up too much. Edmonds is not viable unless he's starting. If he's starting, we're going to lock button him into every single lineup. Malcolm Brown, we're going to talk about Malcolm Brown. Jarvis Landry for cash. Doesn't really suit me and what I like to do in cash, King David Montgomery, but he's playable. I think Tyler Boyd will have plenty of ownership. He's been crushing. His matchup is very difficult as well. He's going to be blanketed by. He's probably going to be blanketed by. I can't remember the cornerback's name, but the Ravens have one excellent cornerback, and he'll probably be on Boyd. So I'm a little concerned about Boyd for that reason. If it wasn't for that, I'd be all over him this week. All right, let's start setting this up, guys. Wide receiver position. Now I'm checking back in every player that I'm open to using this week. I'm usually going to leave in most of these guys. There are other ways to do this. I'm leaving in DeMarcus Robinson. I'm not using DeMarcus Robinson like in one-offs. Some of these guys will only be playable in stacks with their quarterback. Alshon is a no. Some of these guys will be usable in all formats. I'm not using Scary Terry. Love Michael Gallup. Sanu, I'm only leaving him in for stacks, and I don't want much of him. Yeah, Humphreys. Thank you. Thank you, Shafia. Humphreys is going to be taking on Boyd, and Humphreys is a very good corner, so you have to be careful. Cortland Sutton is a beast. DK Metcalf, GPP only. Stephon Diggs, love him at this price. Brown, questionable game time decision. Just going to stay away from it, I think. I'm going to leave him in here, but probably not going to use him. Game time decision, questionable. A lot of things going against him. Fitzgerald, one of my favorite plays. 100 ranking. I mean, that's crazy. Going to leave Calvin Ridley in there for those stacks. Jameson Crowder, a DraftKings play. Not somebody I want on FanDuel. Dede, hell yeah. I'm going to leave Auden Tate in here. Second mouse gets the cheese, guys. Can I blow up my screen anymore? You know what? Let me see something. It's a good question. Is that better? I've never tried to use the domination station like this, but you know what? You know what I can do? I can take my face out of it. You don't need to see me. How's that? Is that better, guys? Cool. You don't need to see me. You don't need to see my ugly mug. Okay. Let's work it like that. Where was I? Okay, we're going through the... I'm going to have a hard time doing this, man. I need to make it smaller, but I gave you the full screen, so hopefully that's good enough. I got to make it a little smaller. I can't work like this. So, cool. See, that's why the live chat is helpful. So here we go. I'm checking back in players that I'm willing to use at least in some lineups, right? And knowing we're just getting started. This is a process. So bear with me. Now, I know certain teams I'm going to be stacking. So, like a Kiki Kuti, for example, not somebody who I'd normally use as a one-off play, but somebody who's playable in my stacks. Probably not using any of these guys, but I'm just going to check them back in because they could be part of stacks that I would set up. And again, if I'm game stacking these games, I want to have most of the options open to me, as you'll see when we open up the stack. Oh, Pringle. Pop the Pringle, guys. Yeah, like and subscribe while you're watching this stuff, man. Let me know that you're out there. Make sure to subscribe to this channel, guys, whoever's watching this right now. Very important because it'll give you a little, if you're not in Slack or you're not on social media when I go live with one of these, it'll give you one of these notifications that we're going live with one of these things. And, you know, I'm doing my best. All right, here we go. Tight end position. Same deal. We're just going through it. We haven't even gotten started with the stacking yet because this is the prep. It's very important to do. One of the other things you could do is just reduce the fantasy points range a little bit. So you kind of like get rid of some of the fluff at the bottom of these, but I don't even know what just happened there. But when we're checking back in the guys that we want, I have a pretty tight player pool. Now you might be asking at this point, like, how do I know which? Guess who I'm not checking? Fuck this guy. I'll check him. Fine. At 6K, it's borderline fuck this guy. Lord Pringle is usable because Hill is going to be out and Sammy Watkins. Hill is likely to be out and Sammy Watkins is definitely out. So, yes, Lord Pringle is absolutely in play and potentially a cash play on DraftKings. I'm not sure if I like a player like that on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, hell yeah. And he's going to be part of my stacks with Pat Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. Okay, that's it. Let's go to defense. There's very few defenses that I'm completely against using this week. It's weird on FanDuel, especially. Pricing is just weird. So I'm really not sure how to deal with defense at all, especially on FanDuel. It's weird. I kind of like the Vikings. I don't hate the 49ers. They're a very good defense. They've been putting up points. Scott, yeah, Hill is a game time decision. I'm assuming he's not going to play. But I don't know. Cash play, when we say cash play, we're talking about 50-50s and head-to-head contests with a 50% odds of winning. That's not what we're building for right now. Right now, we're going to look at how you attack a tournament. The way to win a tournament is very different from cash. When I'm attacking cash games, I want high floor. I want to let my opponent make the mistakes. I want to pay up for running backs. I want to pay up for less volatile positions that I can lock in. Okay? Where I can lock in those situations in cash games. That's when you pay up for certainty. Wide receivers have like an 80 or 70% bust rate. So even if I play Julio Jones, there's no lock he's going to get me more than 10 or 8 points. But almost every running back has, almost every starting running back has about a 50% chance, and some of them 60, 70, 80% chance of scoring a touchdown on any given week. So on FanDuel in particular, as we're looking at FanDuel right now, that's what you want to lock into. You want to look into cash games, locking in the least volatile positions, pay up for certainty. Tournaments, we want to get a little bit of uncertainty. We want higher ceiling. It's the difference. And we want to stack games so that we can contain the nuclear fallout from any explosions that happen in other players that we might have a lot of exposure to. So you load up on Julio and he bombs, he could bomb all your fucking lineups. But if your Julio lineups are contained exclusively to ones where Matt Ryan is at the helm, only your Matt Ryan Julio lineups will blow up, and you'll have lots and lots of other lineups that don't get blown up. That's why we game stack. That's one of the reasons. It keeps your it contains the fallout from disasters, especially in higher volatility positions like wide receiver and tight end, for example, and defense, of course. It contains it to just lineups built around that game stack. Quintuples and higher multipliers are the same thing as hybrids or tournament entries. You'll handcraft yourself a tournament lineup. I'm sorry, that's an answer from one of the questions in the thing. Okay, let's continue. All right, we've got our entire player pool now picked out. We've checked off any team that we're willing to use. I'm adding in the Chiefs. You want to know why? Because Deshaun Watson takes a lot of sacks. My man takes sacks. He throw interception. KC is at home and they're cheap. Jets are great on DraftKings for $1,500. That price is ridiculous. I don't really like them on FanDuel. Yeah, they ain't going to actually do anything. Marky Mark asks about 2-game slates. Yeah, you could still stack, but it's not the same. It's not needed as much. But you definitely still want to stack. You always want to stack. Always. Okay. Now, I'm going to start getting some of my settings going here. So, this is FanDuel. I prefer running backs in the flex. So I'm going to give you 40% wide receiver, 25% tight end. I'm going to leave running back 100%. Now let's get into the good times. I believe 49ers D is one of the ones I have in there. Ocean. I have 49ers D. Yeah, Rams are a little 49ers D is an elite defense. I'll have a lot of 49ers because they're an elite defense and they're one of the cheapest ones. I don't care that the Rams are good. I just want my elite defense to get a sack or two, get an interception, maybe return one, hopefully a turnover, something like that. It doesn't matter how many points the opposing team scores. I'm pretty sure that the Giants defense did great against the Patriots this past week, even though the Patriots won that game and crushed the Giants. Same thing happened with the Jets when they played the Patriots. They scored a defensive touchdown. They put up 20 points. Still got their asses kicked, but they scored. So don't look for defenses necessarily that are going to put up a 0. That's not how it goes. Okay. Set up 50 lineups. Tournament mode. 4 unique players per lineup. Server side. That's our starting point. Furkan's asking about Gurley and DJ and Brown. We get this question a lot. Brown is a lot sketchier than Chase. Brown doesn't catch passes. San Francisco defense is number 1 versus the run. They've allowed 0 rushing touchdowns. Brown is going to be chalk, but he feels like scary chalk to me. Chase Edmonds, Lats Murray, if they start, will be very, very good chalk. That's the difference. All right, correlation stacking options, guys. Let's get into the good times. You ready for this? The most advanced stacking system known to man. Hope you guys are using it. Let's get started. So, based on our cheat sheet, we already kind of have an idea of which quarterbacks we're going to be stacking. And it starts with Mahomes and Watson. So let's get down to business and set up some stacks with Watson first and then Mahomes. Now, why Watson first? Because Mahomes presents his own set of negatives. Start with Watson. Now, first of all, Carlos Hyde is not positively correlated with Deshaun Watson, so I'm just giving him a 0 here. How many Deshaun Watson lineups do we want in our run? I'm going to do 20%. We're going to do in multiples of 10 or 20 for the purpose of this video. So Deshaun Watson is one of my favorites that I like. Now check out this button here. When I click on correlation boost, what that does is it applies a 30% boost to the projections of everybody in these two games. Why am I doing that? So the optimizer will naturally pick players from these games without me having to force them in. We're going to run it, and then we're going to look and see what happens. But with Watson, you either got to run a one player. That'll be one of Hopkins, Fuller, or Coutee. I've already zeroed out Carlos Hyde. I can do a forced two-player, but that's going to give me Hopkins, Coutee, Hopkins, Fuller. I think that, or Hopkins, Fuller in every single lineup. I think that's a lot. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to do one. Now I'm going to do one player from the opposing team. It'll be a team stack. Give me one of these guys. I do think one of these guys will have a good game. It's just tough to know who. So 20%er. Secondary stack. What is this going to do? Well, what that's going to do is it's going to add a secondary stack into each lineup. It will not be part of this game, but it'll be one of these. RB opposing pass catcher, RB wide receiver, same team. It's fucking awesome. So you'll have a massively stacked up lineup. Now, I can run it right now, and we could take a look at what type of lineups are being generated specifically for that stack. We'll get, since it's 20% on 50 lineups, we'll get 10 lineups that are stacked. And you're going to see some really cool stuff about to happen here. You have to click, Jay, you got to click game stacks, not team stack. Right now you're on team stack. You've got to click game stack to show the players from the game. So let me go back to that up here. This is why this is awesome. Because it's live, you can ask me a question. Team stack will only show the players from Watson's team. Game stack will add the players from KC. Okay, when you click the correlation boost, again, that changes the points. And let's go down and see what kind of lineups we generated with Watson. So first, you could look at the combinations, and it's going to give you an idea of what kind of combinations. Here are some Hopkins Fuller plus opponent. I love it. Hopkins Fuller plus one opponent. Hopkins plus Kelsey, Fuller, Kelsey, Reek, Damian Williams, a crazy stack. Hopkins with 3 from the Chiefs, Hopkins, Fuller, 2 from the Chiefs, Fuller, Kelsey. So like a lot of fun stacks with this grouping. And if you look at the lineups, I want you to see what's happening here. You've got your initial Watson, Hopkins, Kelsey, same team, opposing team stack. Then you've got a secondary correlated stack, Saints, Kamara. They're colored so you can see who is what really quickly. Marky Mark. There's no better or worse in DFS. It's just different. Some situations we want a game stack. Other times you want a team stack. Otherwise, other times you want to do both. So yes, I do like to game stack when I can. I prefer it. Contain all the nuclear explosions into one lineup together. But listen, team stacks work too. There's nothing wrong with that. So it's not just one. You look at each game specifically and you try to figure out what are the scenarios. And we'll talk about that when we get to Russell Wilson. With these guys, you don't have to team stack it. So another way to go, let's say you don't want to do everything this way. What I can do is do 10% Deshaun Watson game stacks. Check this out. Now let's add, again, Watson, 10% team stacks. Okay, so now I get the best of both worlds. I've got Brandon's asking me, yeah, it is risky. We don't have all of the answers right now, Brandon. This is for demonstration purposes. So we're not going to put these lineups in and expect to leave them. There's a bunch of situations that we're still worried about for tomorrow. One of which is Tyreek Hill playing at all? Is he? Isn't he? If he isn't, that changes some things. The other one is, of course, the situation status-wise of Alvin Kamara, the situation status-wise of David Johnson, who I think is going to play. Those are going to change the entire slate. If Alvin Kamara is out and Latavius Murray is the starter, that changes the entire slate because we're going to have to lock button Lats Murray into every single lineup. So just showing you, here's a different way to do it. You could do 10% game and 10% team. I love this shit, right? Now, let's keep going. Add another quarterback into the mix. We like Mahomes. Now, here's the deal with Mahomes. Mahomes has been producing without actually producing multiple high-scoring components in his games. What does that mean? Mahomes has put up good numbers, but there hasn't been a game so far this season really where 2 or 3 of his pass catchers / players have also produced slate winning numbers. So it's a really unique situation with these quarterbacks who spread the football around as much as Mahomes does. I don't like heavily stacking them. I'd rather take him almost naked or with just one player from his team. So I'm going to do 1, no more than 2. I'm actually going to turn off the correlation boost and just let it force him more often than not with just one of these guys, right? Definitely going to do game stacks with Mahomes, though, because if Mahomes is having a big game, chances are somebody from the opposing team will have a big game. I'm going to limit Carlos Hyde. I really don't want a ton of exposure to him in general this week, but I don't hate him. He's got a great potential this week. Jay, to comply, just as it says, you've got to like, dislike, set min-max exposures on at least 2 players, just like it says. Like or dislike 2 players in your pool. I'm on Fanduel right now, so you're doing DraftKings. You didn't see me do it, but just setting 2 players to 99% will get you complies with the DraftKings term and condition there. You don't even have to do the smiley faces. You could just set 2 players to 99%. Not doing anything wrong, Jay. That's just the rule. You got to make an adjustment. So again, setting these 2 guys to 99%, that is essentially 2 customizations that satisfies the requirement from DraftKings. But again, I'm on FanDuel, so I didn't have to do that when I was doing setting up this demo. Where are we? 10% Mahomes. Let's keep going because this will take all day. Other guys I like. We already talked about, well, you didn't hear it yet, but in the Players Club podcast, I talked a ton about Matt Ryan. I love him this and every week. The Statsational model is obsessed with this game. Look at the passing yards for Atlanta. That's a lot. It's very green. Look who else has a lot of passing yards. Dallas. We're going to talk about that in a second. You can run 2 back for the Houston side, the Texans, but 1 is plenty. I'm not going to force 2, Scott. I don't think you need to force 2. No, 1 is plenty in that game. Other games we might force 2, but not that one. All right, getting back into it. Look, Atlanta, lots of passing yards, but I think Arizona is going to do just great in that regard as well. So I'm going to give Ryan a 20%er, and I like Matt Ryan with 2 of his pass catchers. He's not doing anything with his legs. This is the spot where we want to do a twofer. And I don't want too much of this fucker, 10%. I don't want too much Sanu, 20%. Okay? Let's game stack it. Now, what we'll do is 15%. Actually, let's do 10% team stacks for Matt Ryan. And then we'll do 10% game stacks. Now, the reason I'm only doing 10% game stacks is because it's really hard to bring it back in this game. The only pieces for Arizona is a potentially injured David Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald, and Chase Edmonds, who's only playing if David Johnson's it. So essentially, this is just Larry Fitzgerald, right? Now I can add Christian Kirk into the mix, but I don't know if Christian Kirk's even going to play. So it doesn't sit well, these game stacks, as much as I'd like to do it. So I might even, you know what? I'm going to even do it less because right now I'm going to end up with all lineups with Fitzgerald. I like Fitzgerald a lot, but maybe not to the point where I want like millions of shares of him. The only reason Mike's talking about Houston and KC, a lot of passing, and It's very true, but KC is terrible against the run. So, and there's a little bit of a revenge narrative with Carlos Hyde, but no, we want these passing games. That's what we want to get involved with. So here we go. So I've done a team stack and a game stack with Matt Ryan. Now, what I like to do at this point, I've already set up 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks. Let's get one more going. Let's get the other side of that game. We'll do Kyler Murray. And I'm doing a 1-on-1. I'm leaving these pretty simple. Do a game stack. I'm only going to do 5% of Murray. Every single lineup with Murray is going to wind up being a Murray Fitzgerald lineup. So that's why I'm keeping it down to 5%. Just the way if we find out Christian Kirk is playing and I can have 2 guys, or, I just don't like his other pass catchers. Keyshawn Johnson, that's just I don't like the other guys. There's no tight end on that team that I'm interested in. What I like to do at this point, again, we want to run the tool. Make sure everything's working. Okay? As you add each stack into the mix, you want to give it another run. Kind of see what's showing up. Want to get a look at it. So I like to see how the stacks are kind of coming together, because when you have 7 or 8 or 9 of them all set up, it starts to become very difficult to track it all. So, all right, so here's your Kyler Murray. It's all with Larry Fitzgerald. Way too much Devontae Freeman. See, that's why you look. I don't want more than 10% Devontae Freeman. So let's do that again. Let's see what else we got. Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson team stack. This is just a team, so some with Hopkins, some with Fuller. That's exactly how we want it. Mahomes game stack, Kelsey, Hopkins, Kelsey, Fuller. It's all Kelsey. So if we want to look at the Mahomes game stack and say, you know what, I don't want all Kelsey, you can set a limit of him, like say 65%, and hopefully it will choose some other guys. So let's do, we do another run, but that's how you're modifying this. You want to make sure that you're getting a nice mix of the various players and keep running it each time as we fill up all of these various stack groupings. Now, those are the basic ones for this week. There are some exciting ones, and we're going to get to those too, but these are sort of the most obvious stacks of the week, the highest projected game totals. Let's just take a look at some of the lineups that are coming up just to give you an idea of what's happening here. So you've got Mahomes, Hopkins, Kelsey, game stack, team stack, game stack. Then you've got a secondary correlated David Johnson, Larry Fitzgerald stack in here. Very beautiful. Mahomes, Hopkins, Kelsey again with Fournette, Jaguars defense. Here you got Mahomes, Malcolm Brown, Cooper as a secondary game stack with Mahomes, Fuller, Kelsey. These are lineups that are hyper built to win tournaments. These are what tournament winning lineups tend to look like. Stacked. And we can go even deeper in these stacks as we will with some of these other games. So where are we? Kyler Murray, we've got these 2 games covered. Let's go back to the cheat sheet and look at who else we like at the quarterback position. Got Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, Lamar Jackson. So let's start with Russell Wilson. And I'm going to talk about Russell Wilson real quick. Russell Wilson goes one of 2 ways. Russell Wilson will lean on the run. I do like Kirk and his pass. Yes. We'll talk about Captain Kirk in a minute. Russell Wilson, one of 2 ways. If he's throwing the football, it's because the other team is scoring. We've seen it every time he plays. Okay? If they can lean on the run, they're going to lean on the run. But if the other team puts pressure on them, then they're going to throw. I had my, it doesn't matter, but what you'll note, so Russell Wilson is the perfect quarterback to only game stack with. I don't want to team stack him. If he's needed, if his skill is needed, that's because the opposing team is scoring as well. I want guys from the Browns if I'm using Russell Wilson. And yeah, Shafia, I don't mind. We'll do a comeback with Baker Mayfield as well here. But that game is now a pick'em. Okay, it started out, it was +2 for, it was -2 for Seattle a minute ago. Now it's a pick'em. So money has come in on the Browns in that game. That tells me that the field basically saw what everybody else saw. The Browns look like shit against the 49ers. They suck. They're terrible now, blah, blah, blah. But really, teams are never quite as bad as they look in certain situations. So we don't think they're as bad. A lot of money is now coming in on the Browns thinking they can win this game. This is a very neutral matchup for both teams, which is great. That means we should get plenty of scoring. So if Russell Wilson is doing his thing and putting up big numbers where we know he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league when they unleash him, it's because the Cleveland pieces are doing what they're supposed to do. So let's go 15% Russell Wilson, right? Get that stack going. We're going to get a lot of different combinations. But I don't love Wilson with Chris Carson. I'm going to limit that to 10%. I think it's usually either Wilson is doing well or Carson is doing well. It's very unlikely that both of them are doing well. We're going to add a rule in, Shafia. Let's do some Baker Mayfield lineups. Same deal. Game stacks. Not team stacks, game stacks. In this case, though, we'll allow for Chris Carson to be in as many as he wants to show up in, because Mayfield can be doing good in garbage time and catch-up time. There are other scenarios. Actually, let's limit it to 50%. But there are plenty of other scenarios where Mayfield is putting up points with Carson putting up points. It's very rare that Wilson will be having his big game and the running game for Seattle will also be doing that. It's almost always one or the other. And now let's get to another quarterback that has the same situation. Dak, the Lego maniac, Prescott. What's going to happen with Dak? Either they're going to lean on Zeke or he's going to be throwing. Yes, I'm concerned. But for the purpose of game stack and team stack, I'm not going to worry about that as much. That's more of a concern in my one-offs and my cash lineups, that kind of thing. Alvin asked about Dwayne Brown being out and if Carson's going to be able to kind of do his thing. Mike Goodness doesn't know why people like Matt Ryan. I'm going to take a minute to explain why I like Matt Ryan. Okay. Even though his coach got fired, I don't give a fuck about if a team is winning or losing games. All I care about are game logs. This guy hasn't been below 300 yards. He's putting up numbers every single week. His coach got fired because his team is losing. They didn't get fired because Matt Ryan's been throwing interceptions. He doesn't look good, but I don't care. He's putting up fantasy points, and that's all I care about. We don't care about wins and losses. Okay, Dak Prescott. What's the deal with Dak Prescott? If they can lean on Zeke, they will. That's as simple as that. The fuck? If they can't lean on Zeke, then they're going to have to do it through the air. I love completely negating any chance of Zeke with Dak Prescott together. If he's doing well, Cooper or Gallup is having a big game. It's that simple. If Zeke is doing well, Dak is probably in chill town. He's like, yeah, Jets fucking suck. So game stacks again, because Dak Prescott, much like Russell Wilson, only unleashes the beast when necessary. If they can lean on the run, they're going to do it. Game stacks. All right. Now we are at the point where we're going to count up how much of our total allocation of quarterbacks we've used so far. I got 10, 20, 35, 40, 45, 60, 70, 80, 90, 90%. I love Gallup in all formats, primetime. Do I like Terry McLaurin against Miami? He's all right. Okay play. A little too expensive on both sites to really want to have a whole lot of it. But I like Scary Terry overall, and it's his best matchup of the year. So I like it, but there are other players at that salary I like more. All right, we're down to our last 10%. Before I even do it, actually, let's take this out of here and give it a run. Why do I keep running it? A lot of times we wind up putting limitations on the domination station on the optimizer that will cause, the lineups not to run as we want. A lot of people don't fully quite understand, like even you guys who are watching this tutorial, you're not maybe picking up on some things that I do, or you're doing things that I don't do. I don't really know why that happens, but it does. But as we start to set limitations on player pools and total exposures and whatnot, you'll start to see that you can overly constrain it to the point where the stack combinations start to get really weird. So I like to keep running it, taking a look, team stacks, making sure that we've got a nice mix of different players in all of these different stacks. The Russell Wilson one, I love it. Lockett and Chubb. I mean, that's the best one. So there's nothing wrong with that. Mayfield, you got a lot of Nick Chubb with Mayfield. So that's one of the reasons why I look at it. Do I want a ton of Nick Chubb with Baker Mayfield? No. It's either or. So I'm going to limit him to about 10%. Now, all the Mayfield lineups are going to give me these two guys. But that's why I'm looking at it. The stack combinations, it's really cool because you could see them and you can make adjustments. I'm going to run it one more time, and then we're going to get to our last quarterback or two. I want Kirk Cousins. I want maybe some Lamar Jackson. Got to slap a like on that bitch. Good morning, America. Slap a like on it. Slapping a door on that motherfucker. We haven't even gotten down to dealing with the player pool yet. We're just setting up our stacks. Guys, I spend 5 or 6 hours a week, 7 hours just doing this, setting up my stacks. It's crazy. Like I'll be up tonight. And the hard part is I'll get it all set up, but then we're going to find out some news on Sunday. We're going to have to adjust. So I leave all my settings ready to go, quick to adjust, get all my stuff reserved. But, I spend hours and hours messing with this. If you don't have the hours to spend, then not everybody does. Not everybody does. You can do it simple. I mean, this what I'm doing right here will have gotten it done within an hour. You can keep it simple. You can also just handcraft a few lineups. Use the cheat sheet and stick with the core plays, 5-star plays, and you can handcraft the lineup. It's no big deal. It's cool. It's all kind of spelled out here. Or you can use the Dom station to make 2 or 3 lineups. You don't have to make 150. Making 150 lineups is not all it's cracked up to be. I mean, those of you who've done it know, who do this regularly know. It's not what you think. It's not what you think. I'm going to do 5% game and 5% team. I really like this approach of doing 5% team and 5% game with these quarterbacks because This is the Cousins lineups. Especially when the opponent, like the Eagles, don't have a lot of pieces that I'd be interested in actually using. You have to look at both teams when you're setting up a game stack, for example. Like when you look at the Eagles pieces here, Ertz, Mac Hollins, I mean, that's it. I'm not allowing Alshon Jeffrey to be used. So I like Cook. I don't want too much Cousins with Cook. This is important. Cook does catch some passes, so it's okay to have some. Let's say 20%, but I don't want a ton of this. Okay. And the other thing is, notice I set it up 5% game stacks, and let's do 5% team stacks. And the reason I'm doing it like that is because the only pieces on Philly that I'm really interested in this week is Zach Ertz. And every single Kirk Cousins of these 5% is going to have Zach Ertz in it. That's enough. It's too much. It's too much. On this one, I'm going to do the same thing on the team stack. I'm going to limit Dalvin Cook to 20%. Okay, now we've allocated 100% of our quarterback exposure. I still didn't actually get any lineups with Lamar Jackson. So if I want to do that, I'll have to go back and reduce some of these exposures for some of these other guys. But I'm running 20. I'm going to run 50 one more time. Listen, the reason I'm not using Alshon is they're going to throw to him a lot. And I don't hate it. But he's going up against Xavier Rhodes, and Alshon Jeffrey has not been a wide receiver that can beat elite cornerback coverage. I've just had him for years, and it's just not been something that he's done. So I'm loath to use him here. I don't really want to use him. In game stacks, I'll be open to it, but for now, I'm just going to use Zach Ertz. Minnesota, I don't like teams against Minnesota at all, which is why I don't care. I don't like using players against Minnesota. Minnesota defense is where fantasy points go to die. And yes, I have Alshon Jeffrey on my dynasty team, and he's been, I got to know him real well. All right. So I just ran the final 50 lineups with the stack setup, and you could start to see what's going on here. Kirk Cousins, it gave me 100% Adam Thielen and opponent in the game stack. In the team stack, I got some Thielen and then some Thielen Diggs, but no Diggs with no Thielen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a limit on Thielen. Let's say 80%, because I do want some Diggs and no Thielen lineups too. I'm going to do that here as well. We're going to set it for 80%. I'm going to run it again because sometimes when we put too many constraints on it, you start to have problems. So I'm going to run it one more time here, and then I'm going to show you how to start to deal with the actual player pool. Alvin, talking about Jets defense, man, you should see them on DraftKings at 1,500. They're basically daring us to take Jets defense. They're thousands less than the next even mildly viable defense. I will have a ton of Jets over on DraftKings. Okay, we've run it. We've got all of our quarterbacks. Let's just take a look. Now, the first question you should be asking me is, hey, Kev, you said Kirk Cousins at 5%. Why is he only showing up for 4%? All of these 5% guys are only showing up for 4%. What that is a rounding issue. There is no exact rounding of 5% into 50. That would be 2.5. We only get 2 lineups, so that doesn't work. Now, as I jack this up to 150, which is our next move, so check out what we do next. This, for testing purposes, we kept it at 50, right? Now we jack it up to 150, and we give it a run. The reason I started at 50 was just because it takes a long time to run 150 or longer than 50. So for the testing purposes, initially, I'm good with just doing 50. But now, before we start to make too many adjustments to exposures or anything, I want to run it for the full 150, get a sense of how all of the settings that we've put together interact with one another, including 4 uniques per lineup when we start to make a lot more lineups. And you're going to see how this affects everything, changes everything. You're going to see a lot more combinations, these players. But obviously, when I do these tutorials and they're not live streamed, And this is a good time for questions, guys, because I'm running 50. When I do these tutorials and they're not live streamed, I can pause it right now and just let it run through the 150 lineups. But if we're doing this live and we're going to take Q&A, you got to wait. You got to wait for the 150 to run. I'm going to run it this one time, and then I'm going to show you how to deal with the player pool itself, because that is the next step in the process. We've got our stacks fully set up, and if you're looking, every stack is correlated, game stack or team stack with a secondary correlated stack. Look how beautiful this is. Mahomes, Fournette, Hopkins, Kelsey, Jaguars, Fournette. I mean, this is great. Watson, Hopkins, Kelsey, Rams, Brown. Okay. These are good lineups, guys. Game stacks, team stacks, secondary correlated stacks, all over the place. Vikings, Cook, Watson, Fuller. Okay. Right now, I've got 150 lineups. All my team setups, but we're not done yet because we've got to deal with our individual player exposures. I love Kamara if he's healthy, but I mean, we know he's not healthy. That's the problem. He's already not healthy. The question is he going to start? If he starts, how much game time will he get? And we're going to probably want a little more of him in tournaments because people will be scared off by the by it. Is it safe to say? I don't want to fade Zeke. I think he has great upside, but when you ask this question, it's a better question for cash. Like, is it safe to not use Zeke in a cash game? I'm going to say yes to that. I like Zeke, but it's safe to not use him. Cowboys are down the right tackle and the left. It's not a good scene for the Cowboys right now. And their offensive line, and that's not great for running back production. I don't think it matters. I think Zeke is a fucking beast, but it is safe. I hand build them, yes. I use the domination station. I use the projections to figure out which players are in the best spots, but I do. I hand build my 3 entries. Anything outside of mass multi-entry in almost every sport, but definitely for NFL, I like to handcraft. That's just how I play. You don't have to, but that's how I do it. Julie loves Mark Ingram. I love Mark Ingram too. He's going to get the football by the goal line. It's the Bengals. They're the worst run defense. What percentage for Kamara is 50%? Hell yeah, 50% is too much. Look, okay, how do you determine a percentage? Look at the projected ownership for a player. One of the changes I just put in as you watch me scroll up a mile just now. By next week, this position selection will be below all of the stack settings. This is a new system, the stack settings, so we're bringing that down to here so you can sort. That's one of the things that somebody suggested. That was a really great suggestion. We'll have that by next week. Yeah, 50% is way too much Kamara. So how do we know how much Kamara to use? Check this out. Okay. Kamara projects for 12% ownership. So when you're setting your ownerships, you're looking at the ownership projection and deciding, do I want to be over or under the field on this player? So he's projected for 12%. If I want to be well over the field, I'd go 24%. I can double his field projection. Hope that makes sense. What we're doing is we're building when we build 150 lineups, we're building a portfolio of players that to go up against the field. So take a look here at my actual exposures, and you'll start to see what I mean. Le'Veon Bell, I love this week, but I love him more on DraftKings than even on Fanduel. I love him on both. But right now, as I run this, I'm getting 81% Bell. He's projected to be 14% owned. So if I love this player and I want to be well over the field, just going 40 or 45% will be enough. Now, every once in a while, I'll go all in on a player. I'll just say, fuck it. I'm staking my week on this guy, which is totally fine. When you do that, just do it. sack it up, sack up, do it, and be right. If you're right about it, that's how you win the million. Ask Bobby Wow how you win $1 million. He'll tell you that's what you got to do. You got to fucking take a stand and be right. The hard part is to be right. But it only takes being right a couple of times a year. So if you take that stand all the time and you're right a couple of times, as long as you can hang in there for the swings, which means playing cash games, bankroll, smart bankroll allocation, contest selection, you got to understand the intricacies of DFS, how it should be approached. Most people don't. If you haven't watched my bankroll management video, you're probably playing DFS wrong. I'm just letting you know. Everybody who's out there listening to this, I'm letting you know that. Paulie B asks, how many touches will Murray get? He will get more than enough touches to crush value. That's all you need to know. You hit the lock button. That's all. Just hit the lock button if he's starting. Same thing with Chase. If for some reason we find out that David Johnson can't play tomorrow, hit the lock button. That's where I'll go 80, 85% exposure. All right, back to player exposures. I want to control these. Malcolm Brown, very cheap. You know, he's going to be chalk, the whole deal. But do I want 50% exposure to a guy who needs a touchdown in a bad matchup? No. Field is going to be 22.5. We'll find out if that changes. But I want to lower it a little bit. I'll probably do 40% exposure. I don't know what I'm getting a little bit of say do that. We're going to control our exposures to every one of these players. See, check out my Kamara exposure, 23 versus 12. That's about where you want to be if you like a player. I'm not getting enough of some of these other guys, so I'm going to slap some likes on some of these bitches like Chris Carson. This is how it's done. I'm surprised at how little Hooper I'm getting. I'm going to have to slap a like on him as well. Or just let's get a love going on Hoops. Mm-hmm. This part's going to take a while. So I really only want to show the general of how to do this rather than literally go through my entire thing and actually set up my lineups. Like, you know, it's going to take forever. I'll spend, like I said, I'll spend hours doing this, but you know, I go through each position group and I start to control my exposures. If I got too much of something, I can just look against projected ownership. Do I want to be above or below or at the same? That's all. You know, I got 18% Saints. They're projecting for 4. So I don't know. If I loved the Saints, I would go 8. I would double, but I'm not going, you know, 4, 8, 12, 8, 4, 8, 12, 16. You know, I don't need to go 4x the field. Our optimizer does not work for Yahoo. No. Alex, you know, he fucked us because he got hurt. As we found out later, he came out of that game because he was hurt. So it's hard to make him dead to us. I love Hooper, but I mean, Kittle, I think, is my favorite of them. But we start to set some of these limits, right? We're going to slap a love on Hoops or a like. Get a little more exposure to him. I like Cooper, but I mean, it's hard not to love Kelsey on FanDuel where affordability is such a big deal. So just keep that in mind as well. Now let's give it another run. And this is the process, guys. I hope you're seeing this because it's not super complicated. It gets more and more complex as we try to control our player pools, our exposures more and more. But overall, if you're going to take it, I'm going to do this last run. I'm going to scroll through some of the lineups because I'm going to end it here. I think we've been going here for about an hour. So I hope everybody's getting a lot out of this, that you've learned how to set up an optimizer. Again, questions, if you keep popping them in there, I'm trying to get to them all. Good morning, America's talking about Kittle being a go. Primetime's ripped. 7:57 primetime. Like the Rams tight end. Be careful with Everett this week. First of all, on FanDuel, he's the same price as elite tight ends. That's a no for me. Secondly, he did a lot of his damage because Brandon Cooks went out with an injury last week. He had a concussion, and that's when Everett started doing his thing. So we cannot rely on that happening again. Brandon Cooks is coming back. He's going to play. Be careful. Be careful with that. You could play him, but be careful with it. I don't hate it, but I like the other guys more. Did one more run. I'm going to keep, guys, I just want you to see how I do this. This is way more Fournette than what I want. So what's going to end up happening is I'm going to run this again and again. Now, how do I determine how much percentage I want? A lot of times what I like to do is go to player props. So annoying that they're not out yet for some of these guys. Frustrated. But we have player prop tools also at DFS Army, but they're not quite out yet at this time. Sean Crosby just popped in. Yeah, we like the Jets defense. We like Jets defense for 1,500. That is a lock in cash for me. All I want is them to not get less than a 0. Like, if you got me a 2 or 3, Jets defense, we're good. The Cowboys are down the right tackle and the left tackle. It won't take much for the Jets to get us the 4 or 5 points we need at 1,500 to crush value. Jay, still confused. You got to do it a couple times, man. That's all it is. You got to do this a few times. I've been running this this is my, I started doing mass multi-entry in 2015. I've done it every season through multiple seasons. 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. That's 5 years in. And I'm going to tell you something, Jay. If I went on and tried to play Fortnite, I would fucking suck. Okay? This is just a game like any other game. You got to practice it to get good at it. That's how it goes. You got to practice it. You got to do it to get good at it. I would suck at Fortnite right now. I'm years behind everybody else. They've been playing. Think of it like a game. You wouldn't expect to jump onto Madden 2020, your first time playing Madden, and start taking out experts who've been playing it for 10 years. Ocean's asking about Mark Ingram. I like Mark Ingram. I do remember Draft Street. Yes, I'm from that time frame. I was one of the first adapters of DFS. I started playing in 2011 before anybody had heard of Daily Fantasy Sports. It was so fucking easy back then. Just to tell you my quick story here. I started on FanDuel in 2011. In that time, in those days, it was so easy. I had figured out that it was like a revelation that using the Vegas game totals was a great predictor of fantasy points output. And that was a new and innovative concept. I wrote an article about it called the Geek's Vegas Lines Breakdown, where I would break down every single slate, every single game using the Vegas lines as a guide. And That article became so popular because no one was doing that in 2012. No one was even writing about daily fantasy sports. No one had heard of it yet. But for the few people who did, it became a massively popular article. That article, that following was what launched what essentially DFS Army is. But now the idea of using Vegas lines to predict games is so commonplace and it's so simple that we almost, you think like, how, what? People weren't doing that? They weren't. That was a revelation. For GPP, do I think Dolphins skins will be somewhat chalky? I feel like people will flock to that game more than they should. I don't think it'll be chalky, so we'll see how it goes. No, I don't think it'll be that chalky. If money were no issue in my budget, what tight end would you take? Always Travis Kelce. Paulie B. It is like learning to write it. Listen, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy to do this stuff. It takes a lot of time. Not everybody has that much time. And that's fine. You don't have to mass multi-enter. Mass multi-entry is not like a recipe for making money. As a matter of fact, I make a lot more money on my handcrafted lineups than I do on my mass multi-entry. I'm letting you in on a secret. Most experts do. Most of the best players, they're making money on handcrafting a lineup, a $300 entry against 40 other people. That's where you make your money. This stuff is fun. I love it. I throw it out there. But the money that I allocate to my mass, like let's say I put this in the $4 or the $5 contest or the $9 even Millie Maker on Fanduel. You know, that's going to be $1,300 or so. I'll have more than that going, significantly more than that going in cash games, and a lot more than that going in high dollar, small format contests, 50 person, 200 person. That's where the money's made. This is just for the good time shits and gigs. And of course, every once in a while, you make $1 million doing this. That's the beauty of it. But pretty much when you're not making $1 million or taking down a tournament, you almost always lose money with mass multi-entry. So be aware. Alex found Geese Vegas lines on Reddit. You remember that? It had been out for years before I figured out what Reddit was and to put it over there. Yeah. 2011, man. I discovered this stuff before most people did. Jay, I've talked about Everett a few times. He's not that cheap. He's cheap on DraftKings, but be careful with him. He's going to be chalk. And with Brandon Cooks back in, I love him much more on DraftKings. I generally don't like him on FanDuel, where he's the same price as or similar in price to Kittle and some of the other guys that I like a lot. I like these questions. DFS is getting sharper. Where do you think DFS is having bigger and better, and the damn government can stay the hell out of our community? Listen, it is getting sharper. And one of the things I'm going to say, and they're not paying me to say this right now, the rake is a real problem for DFS. You know, getting past that 16% fee that the sites take. So it's one of the reasons why I love Fantasy Draft, because their no rake system is just so much better for the community, for keeping your money, building a bankroll. It's just better. So anytime you don't have to pay a 15% fee every single contest you ever enter, that's a good thing. So I hope that Fantasy Draft will be very popular and be successful with this model that they've done. As far as the industry as a whole, we just have to keep getting sharper. What you're looking at right here, this stacking system, look at these fucking lineups with secondary correlated stacks. What you're looking at here is next level sophistication. No one has this. This doesn't exist elsewhere. So what we try to do here with DFS Army is, I get it. I get that DFS is getting harder. We have to continue to evolve. We have to get better. And that's what we've done. We continue to improve the tools. Our developers work nonstop. If you saw my list of development for the Domination Station Optimizer, for our tools, the companies we're working with, providing data, it's unbelievable. No. So yes, we have to continue to evolve, but it's still beatable, is what I'm saying. Jay, that's the way to do it, man. That's the way to do it. You're doing nothing wrong. 10 lineups a week in, single entries, 3 entry max, but make sure you focus. This is the part where people miss. Make sure you focus on small contests. Everybody wants to attack the 4,000 entrant, the 50,000 entrant, the 100,000 entrant. And the problem is when we do that, we judge ourselves too harshly. It's very difficult to beat out 80,000 other lineups in a 100,000 entry contest. And then when you do that, you still only get paid 1.5x on your money. So you need to finish top 20% in those contests, in those massive ones, to get 1.5x. Now, how often do you think you can finish top 20%? The average person can do it 1 out of 5 contests. So if I've entered a GPP 5 times in a row, and I've done average, which is one time I got a top 20% lineup, the other 4 I didn't quite make it there. That's perfectly average. Let's say I allocated $10 for every time. So that's $50 in. My one cash would be 15 out. So if I hit the average number, I'm going to be 50 in, 15 out, down $35. That's 70% of my money gone. And I did perfectly average. So we have to judge ourselves understanding the contest that we're entering. Now, Jay, if you enter a 20-person tournament or a 50-person tournament instead of the 100,000-person tournament, that same lineup that would have gotten you top 20% probably puts you top 2. So now instead of getting 1.5x on my money, I've got 5x or on my money. You feel completely different because you're like, holy shit. Holy shit. I just made 5 times my fucking money. That's pretty awesome. I kick ass at this, right? Now you do it once every 5 times, the same average as you did in the tournaments. But instead of being down 70%, you're actually making money. That's how the pros do it. I can show you this. I will give you all the fucking evidence. I've done this in my bankroll management video. I can talk about this more than I like to talk about the slate. If you look at the top players in the world and their rankings on Roto Grinders, they're all and you look at their wins. You look at their accounts and it shows their games. Their biggest wins come when they're doing $500 against 50 people. $500 entry, 333 against 135 people. These guys, when they go to these finals, they're entering a $5,000 bet. Okay, and they're heavily backed by investors, but they're entering $5,000. So to win a $60,000 ticket to a live final, instead of trying to do that by beating out 100,000 other people, they'll enter a contest with 15 entrants, $5,000 to enter. That's very winnable. Like my chance of beating 14 other lineups is pretty fucking good. Yeah, you saw that video. That's right. By the way, that's a real story. And I want you to know that guy said, I don't give a shit. I don't care. I'm not in this to be profitable. I just want to have fun on a Sunday. All right, let's get back to some questions that are slate related. Takeito. I don't know. What do I think about the Rams pass catchers? I like the Rams pass catchers. It's not a great matchup, but I like the Rams pass. Cooper Kupp is the man. He is now an elite wide receiver. Pox on me. I did a bad job in my preseason rankings because I thought he was coming off an ACL midseason and he would take some time to get there. But he's a fucking beast. 17 targets, 15 targets. Robert Woods hasn't done it, but he's going to. He's getting all the looks. I love that you're looking through the tools and watching the videos, Jay. I really do. I think you're going to do well. Debo. That's my bike, punk. Debo. That's my bike, punk. Come on. You guys know what I'm talking about. Not a big fan of Debo, but he's playable. He's better than Pettis. He's probably the best pass catcher for San Francisco outside of Kittle. If you don't know what That's My Bike Punk is, I don't know what to tell you. Look it up. It's the best lineup pool to get into a tourney instead of the 100,000. Paulie, you got to do small contests. Depends on your budget. Make sure that most of your money is entered into a contest with 100 entrants, 150 entrants, 400 entrants. I want you to play in contests that you can win. You want to be able to win the contest. Is who matchup proof? Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is borderline matchup proof. If you're going to give me 12 to 17 targets every single game, yes. He reminds me of Devontae Adams from last season. Just getting so many looks. You couldn't stop him. This week, he's look at what's going on for Kupp this week. Yes. Look at what's going on with Cooper Kupp this week. They're facing San Francisco. You can't run on the 49ers, which is why I'm so scared of Malcolm Brown. But you can't run on the 49ers. It's an elite defense. They're going to be throwing, and they're going to be throwing to Cooper Kupp in the slot. Will he have a monster game? No, but I don't know. I'm not saying no. I don't know. But will he get 12 targets? Probably. Probably going to get 12 targets. So, yeah, Kupp is borderline matchup proof. I just tried to trade for him. I tried to give somebody Juju Smith-Schuster for him. Paulie B is asking, Paulie, I assume, are you asking about like the tutorial videos? If you look under the NFL tab on DFS Army, you'll see, and these are, so a lot of these are free to the public. So if anybody's watching this that's not a DFS Army subscriber, you can just check these tutorials out, especially the bankroll management one. I've opened that up for everybody. I don't, if you're playing DFS and you haven't watched that and you don't understand what you're doing, you need to. It's under the NFL tab, basic training videos. Good Morning America likes Wilson with no sex locket. But I also like Carson. I don't even know what to make of this. But what is a sex locket? I like Lockett. Is that his nickname? Am I missing a nickname for Lockett? Is he called Sex Lockett? I don't know. All right. Let's take a look back over here. Final lineup. So I still have a lot of work to do on my actual lineups, but I'm just showing you the process here of going through it. As you look at each player, look at their projected ownership, and then make a decision whether you're comfortable being over or under the field. If you set extreme limits on players that are part of your stacks, like Will Fuller, you're going to start to get your whole shit fucked up. So try to do that control within the stacks themselves rather than here. But for players who aren't heavily involved in your stacks, you can raise the projection, you can lower, you can set a max limit. There are guys I know I want more of, so I'll just pop up here and like I could pop up here and I can slap a like on that bitch. You know what I mean? Get a little more exposure. Here comes the cat. My cat is very loud. Oh, is that a Levitan thing? Sex locket? Wait. Hold on. What's going on here? What? He's not having sex until what? His team wins the Super Bowl? Oh my goodness. Interesting. I'm not even going there. Julie Fresh. Oh, man, this is one of the tough ones. If I had to choose between the two, I'm going to choose Redskins defense. But my sensibility on DraftKings is to probably pay down to the Jets and say, YOLO, fuck it. Let's just basically throw away defense. At 1,500, even a 0 or a 2 doesn't destroy you, because the next viable defense, I mean, I don't mind Atlanta, I guess, at 2,200. The next viable defenses are so much more money that sometimes you can actually punt a spot and get kind of like a nothing, especially in cash, and it doesn't harm you. And even in tournaments, it might not be the end of the world. If you guys saw what I have going on here, hang on a minute. Look what's happening. Really? I can't help it. I don't know who knows about Lockett's personal shit, man. I assume that that's something he discussed on an interview. Yeah, this cat has a mind of its own. She doesn't listen. She doesn't care when I'm on a podcast. Never use it on all players, Marky Mark. Never use it on all players. One player at a time. Exactly as I did it in this video. You saw how I did it. First, we set up all of our stacks. Okay? Then we can use this box here, the exposures box, and specifically looking at players that might be higher. I love Larry Fitzgerald this week, which is why I'm really not fucking with it. I don't mind having more Larry Fitzgerald in the field, but and some of these guys, if Tyler Boyd is going to be 6% owned projected, and I've got him 35, that seems like a lot. You know what I'm saying? So like, let's go to 15%. That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at projected ownership versus my exposure. And then I'm making decisions. Do I want to be above or below? Obviously, Reek, he might not play. We might just uncheck him. Mariota, Jeremiah. Fuck Mariota, man. Fuck that guy. He's actually not been that horrible, but fuck Mariota. Cooper Kupp, I'm below. Sometimes I'll see a guy that I'm below, and I want to go higher than that. Like, I can raise up the projection. I can change it to 17. Next run, I'll get more Cooper Kupp. And then you run it again. Cooper, I like. Where's my boy Michael Gallup? This is not enough Michael Gallup for me. So I'm going to go 11.8, right? You might ask, well, where did you come up with that number? I don't know. I just pulled it out of my ass. It doesn't matter. It just means that I want more exposure to this guy. Teddy KGB. This isn't Teddy Bridgewater was last week. He's on the road. Kamara, we don't know what his status is. It's playable, but not going crazy. Derrick Henry. Julie, I like Derrick Henry on Fanduel, especially this week. Denver can't stop the run at all. Look, see, I was able to talk through, and we got another 150 through here. But Denver can't stop the run. We know this. I like Derrick Henry with Tennessee defense together. We know that Joe Flacco is hashtag not that good, as our boy Levitan would say. Who are we talking about, Jeremiah? Derrick Henry is not plus 268. Derrick Henry, if you look at the touchdown prop for Derrick Henry, it's very, very strong every single week. He almost always, he scores a touchdown most games. Are we talking about players not having sex still? Who cares? Who cares? You know who was that kind of guy? Steve Young. He was a Mormon or something. Waited for marriage. Which I think is crazy, because when you're the quarterback at whatever school you're at, or an NFL player, you can be getting all the poontang you want. It's like free. Mariota to score a touchdown himself. That's yeah, okay. Yeah, he has potential to run for one. I use Roto World for injury updates. That's where I go. Roto World. The sleeper app is really good too. I'm not even putting all the rest of these comments about NFL players and who they bang. Who cares? I'm trying to make money. So you start to look at this and you say, back to my exposures, you start to say, okay, Dalvin Cook, do I really want 40%, 45%? No. I love Dalvin Cook, but I'm going to limit him to 20%. We go through this position by position, right? We start to really narrow this pool down. Kamara, 20%. We'll eventually get there. I'm going to, it'll start to give us more of these other guys that we're not getting as much of as we might want. Run it again. Anyway, guys, if there are no more questions, I'm going to end it here. This gives you a really good sort of outline how to use the Domination Station, the new stacking system. Actually, let's finish this run because I'll go through some of these lineups. I want to actually show you guys the beautiful stacked correlated lineups that this is creating. And if you watch my NFL stacking video from the preseason in the DFS Army NFL tab, right here, do I still have them? Basic training. Okay, the videos are all right here. Basic training tab, dfsarmy.com. Basic training tab. Basic training. Basic. Am I having a mental breakdown? Here, basic training tab. Okay, anyway. Do the last run. I want to show you these beautiful lineups that it's created. I've shown this one. This one keeps showing up as the top projected. You might want to use this. I don't know. But I don't love Manny Sanders as much. But Mahomes, Fournette, Jaguars, Kelsey, Hopkins together, Boyd, Sanders, Malcolm Brown, lots of goodness going on here. You could see your correlated game and team stack happening. Now, for those of you who've stuck with me for this hour and a half, there's more Geek. I'm about to upload the Players Club podcast, which breaks down the slate on a player-by-player breakdown, my full take on the slate. So this was more supposed to be a tutorial Domination Station and some Q&A. This was a lot of fun, hour and a half. But we've got the Players Club podcast as well, where I go through the slate player by player, team by team, stack by stack, go over all my details where I'm at right now. But check out these beautiful stacked lineups. We can make them more. We can make them less. Watson, Fuller, Hopkins, Kelsey, Johnson, Fitzgerald. That's fucking money in the bank, guys. This doesn't even tell you, but Vikings, Dalvin Cook is another correlated stack, but it wasn't forced, so it's not lit up. Anthony, we didn't add it for fantasy draft this year. It's not going to happen. Quite honestly, fantasy draft surprised us with the mass multi-entry on their site. It wasn't a thing last year, so I hadn't built it in to the system, and now it's already week 6. It's quite a complicated ad. So we added stacking for fantasy draft, and that's enough. You could do our legacy stacking system is also fucking awesome. So just use that. Jay, just do what I did here. He's popping up for me. So obviously something's different. Mike, we're going to be chilling at the Players Club in a minute. The only thing keeping me from uploading it is the fact that I'm still here doing this Q&A. Hell yeah, I'm playing cash this weekend. I like this weekend for cash. I already set up a ton of cash games in the Thursday to Monday as well, and those are all with Patriots defense and that 27-point starter. So that's a nice feeling. And I use Christian McCaffrey. See how that goes. All right, guys, shutting it down. Good luck this week. Players Club coming up very shortly. Appreciate everybody watching. Remember, like, subscribe, do all that shit. And if you're not a DFS Army subscriber, I assume that's because money's tight. So do the free month, guys. There's a free month offer right here. Do it. Do the super draft one. That one's awesome. Furkan, I almost want to make you watch the Players Club to find that out. I'm going to make you watch the Players Club. It's coming up next. Yeah, I do double ups. Aaron, the one thing I look for in my cash games, I don't care about double ups or 50-50. The one thing I look for is to make sure that the margin is low. So a lot of times the double ups have a 12% margin and the 50-50s are 9%. I go for the cheapest one. All right, guys, that's it. I'm out. Deuces.